Hey, hi! Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, TIFF's Senior International Programmer for Canada, and this is the other thing I do. This week, for a whole bunch of reasons, I'm offering a rerun of this 2015 episode featuring Lauren Collins, an actor, writer, and producer who broke out in Degrassi: The Next Generation and has been working steadily ever since, turning up in everything from The Kroll Show and The Strain to Nose to Tail, Run This Town, and What We Do in the Shadows. And now Lauren is co-starring with Megan Follows in the Crave dramedy series My Dead Mom, written and produced by Wendy Littner and directed by Chandler Levac. It's a prickly, funny, kind of sad little show, and you should check it out. Back in 2015, Lauren picked Gillian Robespierre's Obvious Child, which stars Jenny Slate as an aspiring Brooklyn stand-up whose confessional style helps her interrogate her own chaotic life while she deals with an unplanned pregnancy and a potential romance with the one-night stand that got her there. It's sweet, sharp, and funny, not unlike My Dead Mom, actually. And listening to this episode now is a bittersweet experience. Obviously, because we recorded this almost exactly 9 years ago, the political landscape was very different. We were hopeful then, and I want you all to remember what that felt like. This is Someone Else's Movie.
I've recently gone through this thing where I've been watching a lot of stand-up movies.
Okay.
And, seeking them out.
Documentaries?
No, just movies about stand-up comedians. I just watched King of Comedy for the first time.
Okay.
I've kind of been going through a bunch of those. But, I don't know, for me, I guess it is the first time I saw Obvious Child, and I saw it with my mother in theaters. Okay. I was just like, oh, so that's me. Okay, that's me. Obviously, not in the exact situation that Jenny Slate's character's in, but yeah, that feeling of, you're in your late 20s and you're just trying to figure it out. I heard you say on a couple of other podcasts that, or a couple of other episodes, that you're often surprised by the movies that people pick. Yeah. And as soon as I heard you say that, I was like, oh, okay, anyone who knows me is going to know that I will pick this movie. It's like the most obvious movie that I could pick. Okay. But yeah, I think that's why I loved it, because I just felt like I connected with it so much, and with her.
But everybody ends up picking something that resonates, right?
Yes.
With them personally, and maybe it's nostalgic. People picking films with, there's been a lot of stuff from the 80s and 90s.
Totally.
People are reaching back. Other people go for classics, but there's been only a handful of really contemporary ones, and those are really, those are interesting choices to me, because as you get older, fewer things hit the same way, right?
It's so true.
Well, you're not the same. I know that, you're not no one is as open as they are when they're a teenager,
right.
and then you get older and your tastes sort of clarify,
right?
And stuff just doesn't hit as hard because you have more life experience in general. But
yeah, there is something about seeing that story on the screen and feeling like, this is where I am right now.
Okay.
That is who this is the person that I relate to the most in a movie that I've seen in recent memory. Okay. And that was a very significant moment for me. And hearing someone, the opening scene of the movie, she is talking about vaginal discharge in her underpants. And
as you do.
But that's the thing. That is something that my friends and I would talk about.
Right.
Perhaps not on stage at a comedy club. But I was like, oh my God, they're going there. When have I ever heard this kind of, crass talk coming out of a woman?
Right.
Because... And being so, unapologetic about it. And, as I said, I went to see the movie with my mom, who was kind of horrified.
Okay.
And my mom is, such a progressive, liberal, badass lady.
Right. But
I think it was jarring, because we're not used to that. I think even just in the, year and a half or whatever since this has come out, or about a year, I guess, we're getting more used to it with Amy Schumer having such a moment right now. And obviously the success of Obvious Child. But yeah, there was something so empowering in that moment. And I've seen the movie tons of times, and I've even been sitting there with some of my friends who I've had these conversations with, who were also kind of shocked and get a little bit, prim and proper about it, because it does just feel so, I don't know, it feels like something we're not used to hearing, I guess.
It has a transgressive kick, right? Like, it's just suddenly going, oh, that's what this is going to be about.
Yeah.
And then it isn't. Like, the movie's not about that.
No, of course not.
But it tells you, I think it's great because it perfectly sets up the ending, which is that she's a confessional performer. And it's just there. And the really great thing is that I actually saw Jenny Slate do stand-up.
I've never seen her do stand-up.
She rarely does.
Yeah.
And this was the thing. She organized this... it was the same... it was that same junket. It was the Magic Mike junket. I had an extra night.
This was like a magic trip for you.
Yeah. It was like, it's a through line somehow building to this day. I had a night off, basically, on a junket in Los Angeles. I had an evening to kill unexpectedly. I had a late... Like, the interview was late, so they just... There's no point taking the 10 p.m. We're booking you on the next day's flight. And it was
great.
A June weekend. Sure, why not?
Yeah.
So I went to Largo, which is where I had gone for the Thrilling Adventure Hour and all the things that I love at Largo. And I just thought, well, I'm walking distance. I'm just going to go and I'm going to see what's there.
Right.
And it was Jenny Slate and Friends. So it was her, and she had got, it was a fantastic lineup. Kumail Nanjiani was there. John Daly was there. And he did Bill Cosby Bukowski.
Amazing.
Which he can no longer do.
Seriously.
Unfortunately. And Joe Mandy was there.
I just saw Joe Mandy at Just for Laughs.
Oh, how was he?
He was great, and I think... so I know him a little bit because I worked on Kroll's show briefly. I don't know him well at all.
Right.
But, and I think this is, this is his maybe this is his shtick, but he totally thought he was bombing, and we were loving it. I was loving every second of his set, and he thought he was just going up in flames, but he killed it. He was great. And there were tons of Drake jokes. So the name, he told this really funny story about how the name, they asked him what he wanted to call his stand-up routine for the show, and he was like, let's go with Joe Mandy, the Drake of comedy, because he was playing in Toronto.
Right.
And then he's like, and then I see the lineup come out, and I'm the only comedian that has a name for their show. Everyone else, you just have Pete Holmes or, Hannibal Buress or whatever. And then Joe Mandy, the Drake of comedy, which is the best thing ever.
It positions him very well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was one other act, and I can never remember who it was. But Slate was the MC and host, and she just sort of... She came out and she told me afterward, when she came through Toronto for Obvious Child a couple of years later, she told me she was terrified. She was absolutely paralyzed by stage fright.
So one of the reasons, I think maybe this is another reason why I feel like I just connect with her so much. She's talked a lot about how she did stand-up for years and then moved to LA and developed this crippling stage fright.
Yeah. And she'd been there for just a few months when she did the show.
Yeah. And she actually talked about using hypnosis to get over it, which I thought was interesting. Yeah. But that's something that I have experienced, and I am terrified of theater.
Okay. For
that reason, because it really just comes down to a stage fright issue. So I guess I feel like I relate to her on that, although she's overcome it. So hopefully one day I will too.
You did the live read, was that?
Yeah, that didn't scare me. We had no rehearsal. It was totally cold. I knew that I was going up there, script in hand.
You had your turtle face.
I had my turtle face and my turtle hat. So yeah, that just felt like a very comfortable, warm environment. And I've done a couple of other readings, in the last couple of years. But anytime I've been asked to, audition for a play or do a play, I'm like, no, thank you. No, thanks. Yeah. I think it's just a fear of blanking, totally blanking on stage.
Yeah, that would keep me from ever thinking about it myself. There's so many words.
There's so many words.
Stuff to memorize.
There's so many words. It's so scary. Sometimes I can't believe that memorizing is part of my job because I don't think I'm good at it. But I don't know.
Well, but with TV and film, you're doing it in short bursts. Like, even just
Totally.
even like one take, oneers where like that 4-minute shot in this or the 5
Oh yeah, and now after Birdman, everyone wants to let's shoot a one take movie, It's like, no, I want to be a film and TV actor where I memorize 3 pages of dialogue and that's it. Yeah. Please.
Editors have an excellent function. There's a movie opening up, 2.25 hour single shot film, actual single shot, as opposed to Birdman splicing together.
Oh my God.
Called Victoria, about a woman who goes to a club at 4 a.m. and ends up with her fleeing a heist at 6:15
Wow,
a.m.
okay.
And it's shot in real time, and you realize that's not the way you'd make a thriller. Like, it's boring to watch people drive somewhere.
Yeah,
like,
seriously.
That's why we cut. That's why we have editors.
Wow. Yeah, everyone's got to get over this.
Yeah. I was not a Birdman fan, so I'm totally
really?
with you on this. No.
Well, I did love Birdman,
No, but
but
you're an actor. It's made for you,
yes,
right? Like, it's
totally,
about how
totally.
acting
I'm a
is the
sucker
best
for
thing
that.
ever. I just saw Truth this morning, which is about how journalism is the best thing ever, and I was just still like,
yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. There are ways to tell that story. Spotlight's the perfect way to tell
Right, which
that
I
story.
haven't seen yet, and I'm
really
so
great.
excited to see.
And I'm saying this as a journalist. It's an awesome journalism movie. But Truth is about how stuffy people yell at each other.
Right.
So it's not the same at all.
Okay.
Spotlight is about asking questions and doing the work, and it's great.
Awesome.
But Slate had been doing this. I think this was either the first or second one she'd organized just to get over her stage fright and to make herself.
Well, good for her for, just doing it, right? That's I guess sometimes that's the only way to get over it is just to do it. Actors always talk about the fear and jumping into the fear. Like, oh, fear scares me. That's why, that's what it is.
That's
I don't know.
Yeah, and then what was really amazing about watching her stand up in the movie is understanding that, that's not her. Like, she's actually doing stand up in character. Like, her rhythms are different, and her...
That's really interesting, because watching it, I wondered that, and I wondered how much of, how much of that was written, how much of that she improvised, because it just feels so natural. And I found that with all the dialogue in the movie, not just the stand-up scenes, that it really did have this, like, improvisational feel to it. But apparently... No, it was mainly scripted. I think they had a bit of...
Yeah, there was room to move.
But that's really a testament to Gillian, I'm going to butcher her name. Gillian Robespierre?
Robespierre.
Okay.
And it's even her Twitter handle is Gillian Hard G.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's beaten into me.
A couple of my favorite comedy Gillians are Gillian Jacobs, Gillian Robespierre. There we go. That's really a testament to her knowing who she was writing for and just sticking true to their voice. And I love that. I mean, I guess that's going to happen in independent cinema when you are working on something and it's very small. You probably are going to end up writing for, she found Jenny Slate. I think they had the idea for the short first, and then they found Jenny, and she discovered her in a stand-up club, and then when they wrote the script, they really wrote for her, and they wrote for Gabe Lee, I'm going to get his last name wrong, Liebman. And it paid off, they nailed it. They totally nailed that. And there was something... Even though the dialogue does have that hipster, Williamsburg, quick, funny feel to it, there's nothing twee about it. There's nothing cutesy. It really does feel authentic.
Yeah. Well, there's that moment early on, it's probably not even that early, it's about a third of the way through, where she's outside the house and she's making little magical thinking bargains with herself. And if this happens, I'll do this. If this happens, I'll do that. That feels more vulnerable than anything else in the movie, because she's alone with herself and she's still doing it.
Yeah.
She's
totally. Yeah. She's still relying on these funny little, I don't know, little quirks or little like comic beats. But yeah, she is completely alone. And yet something I hate in movies, actors talking to themselves, those soda lines that are supposed to just be thrown away, and yet that felt so... I could see myself doing that. I can see myself standing there talking myself down off a ledge through a situation like that. That was great. Just so funny. And there's so many little... There's so many great lines. There's so many quotable lines. When she's... The first night that she meets Max and they're drunk at the bar and she's just, like, vomiting out so much stuff. And he says, oh, do you want another drink? And she's like, I'll try that. I'll try drinking. Like, it's just so natural. I love it. Yeah,
I am a sucker as a critic and just as a person. I am a sucker for smart people falling in love. Yeah. Because you get that level of it's not self-absorption, but it's self-awareness. It's the idea that, maybe it isn't even smart. There's that whole emotional intelligence argument, but people who are checking their feelings as they're experiencing them fascinates me because I'm a sociopath. And, is that how it is? I just want to know. Yeah. And
they're so aware of everything. Yeah. That's so true.
And how that happens to, if you're reasonably intelligent and you don't have to be well read, but you have to be informed. If you believe you're informed about the world, then you automatically believe you're informed about yourself. And we don't know shit about ourselves. Like that's the core rule.
I love even just, she's snooping around his apartment when she wakes up in the morning and she's like, who is this person? That is the last person in the world I would ever end up with. Yeah. But I think...
Well, that's your classic screwball premise, right? I mean, you have to start there.
And it's the, it's the meet cute, right? That is how I describe this movie. It's like the modern meet cute. It's, without a doubt, it is the best romantic comedy I've seen in a decade, maybe.
I was trying to think of other ones, and there aren't many that
There really aren't, because there was this, and what a surprise. I'm a sucker for a romantic comedy, and yet through, most of the, like, mid to late 2000s, I hated every romantic comedy that I saw that starred Katherine Heigl.
Well, but that's I think that's just everybody's reaction.
Totally. And I mean,
it's not a direct comment on Heigl. It's just
no, of course not.
The mechanized nature of the genre. The one I always come back to is as an example of bottoming out is the Patrick Dempsey one, Maid of Honor, where he decides he's gonna, he's maid of honor, so he has to go and break up a relationship. And it's the kind of movie that tells you that the lead is a sociopath because he drives and parks in Times Square. It's like, nobody does that.
No one does that.
Don't make that guy do that, because I hate him now, and he's supposed to be the hero. But everything's affected and everything's chosen, and there's this identikit
and
practice.
Everything is so perfect. Like, even, Sarah Jessica Parker, Katherine Heigl, whoever it is, Kate Hudson, falls over with egg on her face and looks like an absolute bombshell knockout in the process. And Obvious Child is messy, and it's, when she... And I loved this attention to detail when she goes home with him and has this one-night stand, and they have that hilarious, sexy hookup.
Yeah. Kind of frantic and awkward.
It's frantic, and she looks, I think Jenny Slate is gorgeous, but, like, her hair's a mess, and she's wearing, like, a granny bra, and, you can tell that there's just so much thought put into the detail there, because that character did not go out that night and put on her sexy lingerie because she thought she was gonna hook up with a random dude she meets in the bar, you know? Yeah. And that's real. That's real to me.
Yeah, and it's detail that is unnecessary as well. Like, you could go without it. You could shoot around it.
Sure, of course.
But it's great that it's there because it does feel like just an extra level of thought went into it, and also even the choice of the title, which is, when that song starts playing, it's like, oh, that's why.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of the title?
I think it's a sign. I think it's an indication of her emotional state. Like, the point is not that she's pregnant. The point is that she needs to grow up.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even need to grow up exactly. She just needs to stop being so helpless. And even that sounds more judgmental than I meant it to. She needs to stop thinking she's helpless. I don't believe in the universe helping people. As she certainly tries to make it work in the film. But I think that there's a level of pleading that can happen in people when they hit a wall and they don't know how to get around it, or they hit a ceiling and they don't know how to get out from under it. And what she's doing in the film is she's pointed towards where she needs to be, but she just doesn't know quite how to get there. It's like being lost on the subway.
It's funny because, you know, everything that you just said about her being kind of helpless and being kind of lost, what is the one thing that she is 100% definitive about in the movie? Getting the abortion.
Yeah, and I was going to say her career and the abortion are the two most important things in the world.
Yeah.
But the fact that the abortion is never in question, that's what I mean about getting lost on the subway. She needs to get where she's going.
Yeah.
But she just hasn't figured out the mechanics of it. And it's such a... and we talked about this at the time when Slate was here, and I did a phoner with Robespierre, that there's never any question in their minds, and it's not a movie about suspense, about, she's going to punk out at the last minute, and she'll decide she wants to give it. They said they had none of that.
No, because that's not...
Yeah, they only wanted to tell the story of what happens, not what might happen.
I love that we've already been talking about this for how long now, and this is the first time we've actually been like, oh, right.
It's also about this.
It does happen to be a movie about a woman getting an abortion.
Yeah.
Because, you know, in every article and every review you read about it, it was the abortion comedy. It's not. It's a romantic comedy. It is the most, like, classic setup for a romantic comedy ever. Just told in, like, a totally fresh way. Yeah.
It has one additional complication.
Yeah.
Which is dealt with, because it's the 21st century, without... I mean, it's like the counter argument to Knocked Up, which was about carrying a baby to term, and to the point where they clearly had to reverse engineer a scene where somebody says, you know, there is another option, and it's called Shmishmortion. Like, it's just, and I get it, I understand.
And I love Knocked Up. I love Knocked Up as a movie, but...
And if you establish the character's perspective and the reason why they, you know, if we understand that, and we sort of get that, it is really clear, the one scene where it's just like, hi, we understand it's the year 2007, and because of that, we have this other thing that we're not going to do, because then there wouldn't be a movie, but here's why we have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And in Obvious Child is the opposite, in that, no, it's not even a question. Let's just get there.
Yeah, yeah. She knows exactly. The second that she realizes, I might be pregnant, she knows the choice that she has to make.
Yeah. And that is something that you don't see, the certitude, which is, I would guess, more likely to be the case with a lot of people. I mean, there was
definitely.
I'm trying to remember who it was. Larry Wilmore's nightly show had a panel in its first couple of episodes, of weeks anyway, about the latest attacks on Planned Parenthood and something. And one of the guests was a woman who said, "Yeah, no, I'm pregnant, but not for long," and just threw it out there. And it's like, that's kind of the most terrifyingly honest thing to say in front of an audience of tens of thousands or millions of people, that this is how you feel about this thing, which is supposed to be this contentious, precious.
And it is, I had known that I wanted to talk about this as soon as you asked me what movie would I choose, but it is so... Just even a year later, all of a sudden, it's so relevant again because of everything that's happening with Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, I still see... I mean, even today there were a bunch of tweets with the I Stand With PP hashtag, which...
Oh, yeah, because Texas is trying to take, Medicaid's involvement away and, shut all of Planned Parenthood's doors in Texas.
Yeah.
And Louisiana was just trying to do it, and Ohio was trying to do it, and it's like... What year are we living in?
There's that whole settled law concept with Roe v. Wade, but no, it's, I'm sorry if you're listening in Texas, I hope you're in Austin, because otherwise Texas is the worst. It's just, it's the social conservative, I don't even know what the term is. I was going to say backlash, but it's not a backlash if it's been going on for 40 years. It's this endless insistence, and we saw it here too, up until recently, where... we don't like the way the law has been settled, and we'll just wait you out. We'll just keep pushing, and then we'll get one judge, and that's all it'll take. And that's not how it works. But, the tiny little chipping away and the little erosion of rights. New York, which a friend of mine has often referred to as an island off the coast of America, they're safe. I mean, there's still protesters, and there's still... rampant assholery around.
Of course,
Planned
which
Parenthood
will
clinics.
Happen anywhere,
but that law's not going anywhere, and everyone is safe there. But you also, making a movie there, kind of don't have the chance to realize just how rare that situation is. LA's got it, in San Francisco. Any developed urban center is going to have access to the legal things.
Totally.
And a lot of illegal things. But the whole point of yeah, the whole point of being able to get an abortion is so you don't raise a child you don't want, or so someone doesn't have to grow up in poverty, or someone else doesn't have to have their life's trajectory derailed by... This is not stuff that needs to be rehashed.
Even the scene in the movie, and this is, of course, just naive but incredibly lucky Canadian here sitting watching the movie, where she's told that, no, this procedure is going to cost you $500, which, as she states in the movie... Although this is maybe the one inauthentic moment of the movie where she says that's the majority of her rent, the $500. Yeah. I'm like, where do you live in New York where your rent is $500? But anyways.
Some heretofore ungentrified level.
Yeah, exactly. She's like way out in a borough.
Yeah. Queen's face.
Yeah, something we haven't even heard of yet. It's that cool.
Yeah. The sausages are going to change the world.
But it is... sitting there watching that thinking like, wow, that is something that if I were in this situation, would not have to deal with. I wouldn't have to deal with coming up with the money to do it. And, to think that just my neighbors to the south and this girl who was living a life that couldn't be more similar to mine has that extra consideration is really... It's shocking. And to think that, then you go a little bit further south than that.
Oh, yeah. No, they don't have clinics.
Yeah, you have to leave the state.
5 hours to get somewhere that can get you somewhere.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Norm, interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. Last week, I wrote about Arrow's J-Horror Rising box and the 4K restoration of Trick or Treat they just put out, and Severin Films' resurrections of the cult classics The Red Light Bandit, The Mad Bomber, and Don't Change Hands. See what you're missing? Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io, or find a link at the Simcast Blue Sky account. You like reading about movies, I like writing about them. Come check it out.
I'm registered dietitian Abby Sharp, and on my new podcast, Bite Back with Abby Sharp, I'll be dismantling the multi-billion-dollar diet industry that keeps us in a cycle of self-loathing and food fear. Join me every Tuesday for expert interviews, engaging conversations, and my signature science and sass to bust myths, correct misinformation, and help you break free from diet culture for good. Listen for free on the Seeker app or wherever you get your podcasts.
I can't imagine what it's going to be like for teenagers 20 years from now to see, as they watch in their neural download net helmet.
Right.
That was a thing? That was a thing you had to go through?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hopefully now, had the election here not turned out the way that it had, or that it did, rather, it's scary to think that maybe... we would have been dealing with more of those realities.
Little clawbacks, little cuts, little changes.
Yeah, just little things that you don't even realize that they're happening, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, it's 10 years later and now I can't get an abortion?
Yeah.
That's frightening. Yeah.
And so much of that comes with the judgment of, well, you should have thought of that. This film has none of that, which is so great. There's... She's called out repeatedly for her own behavior, but never for her decision.
Another one of my favorite lines, because this also felt, if I were in this situation, I know that I would be able to talk to my mother about it. And when she does finally decide to tell her mom's like, oh my God, I thought you were going to tell me you were moving to LA. I'm like, yes, that's could be my life. But yeah, it's interesting that, yes, okay, so we've addressed the fact that she is making this decision, and that is never what the story is going to be about.
But it's settled law for the story.
Absolutely, and, it happens pretty early on, too. But there is this idea, and these are conversations that I've had with my friends. Do you tell the guy? And she does spend the majority of the movie wondering about that and making that decision and knowing ultimately that it's the right thing to do, but maybe it wouldn't be for someone else.
Well, that's the really perverse way, and we talked about this at the time. It's the screwball engine. Like, that's the secret. It's not I'm an heiress or I am but a pauper.
Right.
is, I'm carrying your child.
Your child.
But not for
But
long.
not for long.
Yeah. And how that's the great, as opposed to the incredible artificial setups of every Gary Marshall romantic comedy. Like, what does she do? She saves him right back. No, the point is, we find out if he's worthy of her by discovering whether or not he's going to respect her decision.
Yeah.
Because he can't do anything about it.
Yeah. And also that is never, part of the narrative either.
Yeah.
Him fighting back and saying, but what about my rights?
Right.
And
like the not to tar Judd Apatow entirely, but he makes movies from the guy's point of view.
Totally.
And that's what Knocked Up is. Knocked Up is again, you don't have any say, and it's about how the guy feels.
Mm-hmm. I understand why he does that. He's a guy.
That's how he writes.
That's, you write what you know.
Yeah. But with this, you actually have a film where, yes, all the man babies on the internet are going to cry that the poor guy doesn't get a say, but he doesn't have a fucking say.
No,
That's
he doesn't
the whole
have a fucking
point.
say. He doesn't have a say. Sorry. And, to add to that, I was thinking about, what are my favorite romantic comedies of all time, and so many of them are told from the male perspective. Yeah. Like When Harry Met Sally or Annie Hall, or I think that's another reason why, I love this one so much, and this one does feel so modern and so fresh, because it is 100% from her point of view.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Mm-hmm. And we get to see her develop her point of view, which is the other thing. Through the stand-up sequences, you actually, that's what I meant about, the title, you get to see her turn it into a persona rather than, like, there is that moment in the second or in the final stand-up set where she splits and she divorces herself from her frantic, panicky, fluttering confessional thing that she's been doing in life, but it's kind of slowed down over the last couple of scenes.
Yeah.
And here it's like she leaves it on stage for the first time, but that means endangering the relationship. But there's that really, it's the kind of movie where if this was being made, if there was a bigger budget, if there was a bigger cast, if it was an A-list star, there would be all this pressure to make it less caustic, to make it less searing and less dangerous, because you have to love her. And you have to feel that, this is only a mistake. But it's not a mistake.
It's not.
It's a choice, and it's an amazing choice. It's an empowering choice. It's a liberating choice. And it's a choice that makes you respect the hell out of both the character and the film.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it doesn't back away.
That's the moment, right? Yeah. That's the aha moment of the movie where it all kind of clicks. And even though he leaves, she still thanks her audience, and I love that moment when she says, when she says, "Thank you so much for being," I think it's so generous or something like that with me tonight. And you realize that it's all kind of clicked for her. And that is a point in the movie when everything kind of just like slows down a bit. Like, I think, the abortion is the next day, and there's that really like beautiful scene of her in the bathtub, and she's just sort of like, she's slowly just like bathing herself and shaving her legs. And that is one of the first times when you've really just seen her, like take a moment and breathe and sit in, the reality of what she's about to do. Right.
And also to just sort of not be on. Because even in the scene with, when she and Gaby Hoffman are cleaning out the bookstore, she's doing stuff. There's
totally. She's sitting in the box.
There's business, right? Like, there's always stuff to do, which is great because we understand just how antic she is and how worked up she is. But yeah, I think it is. You're right. It's the first time the movie breathes.
There's at least like 2 or 3 moments in the movie where she walks into a room or someone, sneaks up on her and they say, "Whoa, you're on edge today."
Yeah.
And it's so true because she really is until that like final release on stage.
Yeah. And I mean, that's who Slate is. She's pretty animated. She's, she's very, present's the wrong word, but she's always, she
feels, you can tell that she's someone who feels everything, to the nth degree. Like, she lives in every moment. And I love that about her. And I'm sure that that's what makes her such a, compelling presence on screen.
Yeah. And so much of her is feeding into the character, and Robespierre is clearly aware of that, while still creating a performance. Like, I think that's why there was A24, the studio in the States, pushed for Oscar consideration gently, not hard enough, I don't think.
Yeah, I know. She really, and she won the Critics Association Critics' Choice Female Comedy Actress.
As she should be. Although,
Yeah.
I guess it's a comedy for purposes of awards.
I think it is.
It's that whole Golden Globes thing, right? Like where anything can be a comedy or musical if you try hard enough.
Yeah.
Which always ends up pushing the actual comedies or musicals down on the list.
Totally. But I mean, there are wonderfully dramatic moments, and she really does I was so impressed with her dramatic acting in the movie, but I think she would be A-okay with us saying that this is first and foremost a comedy.
Yeah. Oh, I think the film is, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think that also works against it. But that, or rather, I think the fact that people know she's a comedian worked against the performance because, she's not really acting. It's that whole thing where Julia Roberts wins an Oscar for Erin Brockovich, which is a perfect pairing of the star persona and the character.
Yeah.
And yet somehow that works against comics.
A comedy, yeah. It's so true.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah, I've never really... and nothing against Julia Roberts. Erin Brockovich is great. But it's the kind of thing where it's just like, if someone funny is funny in a movie, that's not as important. But I guess, it doesn't have that level of indication of showing you. Lenny Abramson, the director of Room, was just saying that the thing he tries not to do in movies is have an actor tell you how important or intense the scene is, because they aren't thinking about that. They're just thinking about getting through it. Right. The character would never comment. Right. So that's what people respond to in drama. It's like, it was really hard to do that. That must be important to her. That's better than making people laugh and understanding a character through comedy.
But yeah, the skill that it takes, and what you were saying about how her stand-up persona is different than than Jenny Slate's stand-up. Like, the skill in that is... That's an incredible thing.
It's something. And she was... she's equally convincing in character, but it's also... she's sort of the character is using this to laugh through the misery and the terror and all the other stuff that she's never shown anybody else. It all comes out, and it's like, I think about Eminem and 8 Mile. It's that kind of grace of filtering tension and concern into a performance of something very different. But yeah, damn, she's good. She's just so good. Yeah, and everybody else is good too. She's surrounded by people.
I know. I was so charmed. I didn't know who Jake Lacey was, and I don't know what he's from. Now, of course, I know he was on Girls last season and playing an equally, lovable guy.
I assume right after this played Sundance, they just grabbed him.
Oh, for sure. Where do these guys exist? Yeah. Where do these guys come from? He's such a cuddler.
That's the sort of the idealization, I think, aspect of it, where in order to get to the end of the movie, he has to be not the most understanding person in the world, but he has to have a legitimate amount of softness,
heart,
right?
And
it can read as weakness.
Yeah. But I didn't see him as a weak character.
It doesn't. But that's another tightrope, right? Because there's so many. Even stuff that I've just seen recently, like Truth this morning. Mapes' husband is just a quiet enabler, not an enabler, but he's just like, yes, honey, I know your work is important, and that is all true, and of course it is. But at the same time, that character would have things to say. Like, he'd at least be more than just, I know your work is important, because that's something he would have said to her 10 years ago. What you get in Obvious Child is someone who has his own interests, he has his own trajectory, he's doing stuff when we don't see him.
Totally, yeah. Because you find out he's got his job and he explains it to them, and they clearly don't understand it or probably even care that much.
Yeah, he's the new guy. Why would they be that interested?
Exactly. That could have been such a one-note character, and he did find, some layers there.
Some stuff in there,
And I mean, Gabby Hoffman. I'm never going to be mad about the comeback of Gabby Hoffman that we have all been waiting for so long.
It's Crystal Fairy, I think, was the first kind of sign of that. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that. But yeah, that was, I guess...
With Michael Cera.
Yeah, sure.
Just an incredibly obnoxious performance, but she's amazing. She just refuses to give.
She's so... Well, I mean, for me, it's Transparent.
Right.
Oh,
of course.
God, she's so good. And they all, Girls, Obvious Child, Transparent, they all sort of, fall under this umbrella of dramedy and, something about, the, hipster locales, even though Transparent is in California. I don't know, they all kind of, group together, and I feel like Gabby Hoffman is this thing that joins them,
It's a sort of continuum of, contemporary urban experience.
Yeah,
metropolitan experience, maybe? There's got to be a better term.
And just, all from a female perspective,
Yeah. And it's, again, it all comes back to Robespierre being smart enough to get these people and work with them and develop and spend time putting it all together, as opposed to just saying, I have this thing I want to do, which I guess people do that still in the movie, but it doesn't happen as successfully.
And I guess probably because the movie started so small, or I would imagine it started so small. I don't know when.
Well, as a short, it was a pretty...
Yeah, and then from there, I don't know when distributors came in and how they got all their funding. Although I think there was a Kickstarter.
I think there's a Kickstarter credit in the film. I think it's for the featured version, right?
Yeah. But it's writing what you know, and it's writing for who you know. So I love that she probably didn't have to answer to some executive producer that was saying, well, we really think you should audition for, let's see if Emma Stone will come in and read for this part, or whoever, the it girl of the moment.
Yeah, we can get you.
Might be.
Yeah, additional.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't know which one, but she'll be right for it.
And it's funny that you mention her, because this is so not... She is so not manic pixie dream girl, even though she is a hipster living in Williamsburg wearing cute hats. There is no manic pixie dream girl anywhere near this movie, and I love that.
Well, and if it was shot from his perspective, she'd be a nightmare. She'd be terrifying. This woman shows up and
totally,
and now she's pregnant.
I was gonna say, I think.
There's no way for his side of the story to be told with full knowledge.
Yeah.
And have it not be.
And it's a really
awful.
It's a really beautiful thing that that he so clearly falls for her the first night that he meets her. That and watching that movie, they're dancing around the apartment, and it's such a special moment. Okay, you're obviously going to end up together. That's where this movie is going. Right. That doesn't take away from when it happens at the end. But yeah, that she's so ballsy, and she's so just verbal diarrhea out her mouth, saying, just unapologetically being ballsy and funny, and not, even though she is probably second guessing everything that she said to this guy that she just met. I don't know. He's charmed by that, and I'm like, where do these guys exist? Because I do think that's something that can be very intimidating to. A guy picking up a girl in a bar. Oh wait, you're speaking back to me and you're making jokes and you have something intelligent and smart and funny to say?
Yeah. We're told it happens all the time.
Right. It doesn't.
not in my experience either.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird to still watch that fantasy get churned up and because the other thing too is that now it gives people kind of this fake map.
Right.
For what to do in those situations.
Right.
And you come off as an incredible weird phony. I've been married for 11 years and we've been together for 13. So obviously I have no idea what the kids today do.
Right.
But, oh God, I'm old. I'm so old.
No. Wait, you were going to tell me the story of how we met.
Oh, yeah. That's true. We met online. And we kind of, chatted back and forth for a while, and this was in 2002 when that was still creaky and old and weird. Okay. And you had to wait for dial-up. No, it wasn't that. But so it was one of those things where the night we met, there were, there was just an understanding we were just going to meet for coffee and say hi, and that was going to be it.
She wanted to make sure you weren't a murderer.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Totally. I wanted to make sure she's not a murderer because, I have soft bits that can be stabbed also.
Totally fair.
But it was one of those things where it's I had met people online and there had been absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
In person. It's you don't want to get committed to 3 hours of sitting around and feeling each other out just to find out, that thing you said was true. Mm-hmm. By the time we were ready, we chatted online for a couple of weeks, and by the time we were ready to meet, it's I'm pretty sure I know who this person is, and she knows who I am. And
but you could never be 100% certain.
Right, yeah. And I had a column in a weekly paper. I'm not hard to find.
Yeah.
So we ended up agreeing, we were going to meet for a coffee at this one Starbucks for an hour, and that was it. Yeah. Tops, and she had a thing, and I had a thing.
Yeah.
And 30 minutes into the conversation, we were canceling our other things. And, we dated for a while. And, we moved in a year later.
I love that.
And, it was really, really nice. And it's one of those things where it didn't feel forced, and there's no performance to it. And that's what the movies have to have because They're movies. They need to
So-
be idealized and fantastical.
Okay, so here's my theory. Because again, this is, definitely the best and one of the only romantic comedies that I've loved in recent memory.
Mm-hmm.
Is the romantic comedy dead because romance is dead? Is that the problem? Is it that, like, technology and our stupid cell phones and Tinder and all this crap has just... any of these old romantic comedies that you love, none of them would be possible now. When Harry Met Sally never would have happened because the second they got out of that car, she would have gone to look him up on Facebook and they would have added each other and then they never would have spoken again.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I had actually, there's a movie out now called Sleeping with Other People with Jason Sudeikis and Alison Brie.
Right, how is that?
It's terrible. It's terrible. It is basically a When Harry Met Sally situation in that they are two awful people who agree not to... She meets him in college and they sleep together one night.
Okay.
They agree it was a mistake and then they don't see each other again for 13 years.
Okay.
They reunite as in their 30s, and because their dating lives are so disastrous, they agree not to sleep with each other.
Okay.
And be friends. And they come up with a little code word.
So it's almost like an opposite of Friends with Benefits or whatever those movies.
It's the... I'm going to insist that I'm not interested in you.
Okay.
So I can have a relationship with you. And then, of course, they turn out to be perfect for each other. What the film doesn't acknowledge is they're perfect for each other because they're sociopaths. They're horrible. They're horrible people. I'm throwing that word around a lot today for some reason. But they're awful people who deserve to be together because it would limit the damage to the people around them.
Wow.
But it doesn't get it. It doesn't get it. There was a film last year with Zac Efron called That Awkward Moment, where he also plays a monster who, his whole thing is, hey, I don't get attached to anybody. It's like, no, you sleep with people at random and then you dump them and you're not
because
there
you're a
for them.
shitty person.
Yeah, and you're not there for them when they need you. And the movie needs to know that for me to like the movie.
And I guess that's why, the Obvious Child is so fully aware of Donna's shortcomings, right? That's why it works.
We're watching her become a better version of herself. That's the point of the movie. But the movie understands when she's making mistakes. That's what's important. It's not that she's not allowed to do the wrong thing, but the film has to support its own point of view. And what these other films don't do is understand that you cannot play goofy, happy music when somebody's being an absolute shit.
Right.
Because that means we think you're on their side.
Right.
And the movie can separate, like The King of Comedy is a great example of that, because it's fully aware.
Oh yeah, of how dark and that he's a lunatic. Yeah.
And Obvious Child is on her side throughout. Is absolutely, the musical choices are, they're hopeful. But when she gets called out for her behavior, the movie's on the side of the person doing the calling out. Like when she has those confrontations, we are supposed to understand that she is not right, and she is going to learn from this. Right. And like just the sense of purpose and intelligence behind the camera, it's so important. And it's not the kind of thing you can just dump on. You can't just say, oh well, because I've cast there's another example of a movie where because you've cast you cast Robert Redford as Dan Rather, you're halfway there. Except that he's a terrible choice because he doesn't look or sound anything like it. But it's like, well, he's a symbol of integrity for Rather's audience. Redford's audience will automatically think, oh, of course, he's Robert Redford. He'd never do the wrong thing. Yeah. But maybe you want to make us work on that a little bit and wonder about where someone's coming from. That's why Slate's such a great choice.
And you believe in your audience a little bit, right?
Yeah. The movie trusts us to understand what's happening. And that's not something that happens very often. So I think that's what you need in a romantic comedy. You need a sense of... you don't need to be handheld. You don't need to be condescended to, absolutely. But just, assume the audience is as smart as the characters. Yeah. As opposed to, like the Gary Marshall method now is, like New Year's Day or Valentine's Day. All of the nice, pretty people get to kiss each other. Like, that's all it is. And that one guy dies with dignity.
And it's funny because, I just said that you know exactly what's going to happen in this movie. You know that they're going to end up together.
But the movie knows that too. Yeah. Like, that's the point. We're complicit in this structure. Right. But it doesn't expect us to just sit there and not make the effort of caring. Right. You're going to like this one because it's Sandy Bullock and she's going to drop a thing on her foot. It's... And I know you listen to Comedy Bang Bang. I shouldn't even be attempting Gary Marshall.
Who is it who does Carrie Marshall?
Oh, Paul F. Tompkins.
Of
He's
course.
just a genius. But it is just, it's remarkable how lazy some romantic comedies are willing to be, and how apathetic they are about, it's the thing that the Baxter was about, with Michael Showalter as the guy who gets dumped in the romantic comedy. Barely got released. Really, really
What's
smart.
it called? The
It's called
Baxter?
The Baxter.
Okay.
That's the role. The guy who gets dumped by the hot girl who falls for the hotter guy.
Okay.
And finally realizes that he's the one who goes to the she's the one who gets he's the formulaically.
Okay.
He's the one who gets left at the altar.
Okay.
So they made a movie about him.
Okay.
Which is kind of great and also self-limiting because it can't work out.
Right.
The whole point of this movie is that he's going to get left at the altar.
Right.
Happy Endings started that way with Eliza Coupe abandoning Zachary Knighton. And that found an interesting way back. But all of these things require the audience to be smart enough to know when they're being manipulated by the structure. And I think that's what's killing romantic comedies, is that there just aren't enough of them that are made by people who are sick of romantic comedies.
Right. I mean, I wonder if that's what Gillian Robespierre was... I wonder if that is how she feels about romantic comedies. Because there's that moment, it's the last scene of the movie, where they're flipping, she's just had the abortion, they're going to spend the day together. Yeah. He's flipping through the channels and says, oh God, it's only romantic comedies on TV today. And she says, oh no, I hate those. And you can tell it's in the most sarcastic tone ever. I actually, because I was reading some reviews and stuff of the movie before our chat today. And one review referenced that scene and took what she said at face value.
Really?
Did not understand the sarcasm in it at all. I'm like, hello. So I like the fact that clearly they do have an affection for the genre.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm sure I'm going to get this quote wrong because it's translated anyway, but I think it was Godard who said the best way to criticize film is to make a movie. And I think hopefully, I don't know what Robespierre has to do next and what she's going to chase. But yeah, I just want her to make something she cares about again, because that's where the good stuff comes from.
And you hope that now that she, obviously this was such a huge success, you hope that she won't have too many people,
noting her to death.
Yeah, and really trying to put their views and studio views and whatever onto her, because clearly she has such a strong voice. Yeah, that would be a shame. It'll be interesting to also see her write for someone else, because clearly they were so in tune. I love that one of the quotes that I read, I think it was Jenny who said that, the reason why they got on right away is that there are two ladies who, what was it? They... love a good fart joke, but are truly sensitive ladies. And I was like, wow, that is bang on, and that is exactly what this movie is. Yeah,
it finds the line between. Well, I mean, it opens by showing you exactly how far it's willing to go.
Totally.
And then it just shows you, but it likes things.
But there is a shocking amount of bathroom humor in this movie, and I didn't realize how much. I guess I love that kind of humor, and it just makes me laugh like a 8-year-old boy or something. But I really do.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just that women just choose not to go there because they think it's condescending to the boys' level or something. Because it is it's something
I think it's
you don't see very often.
No, you really don't. It's hard to think of another movie.
Yeah. I mean, Claire Denis' films are incredibly confrontational, but they're not funny. It's not bathroom humor. It's just physical body comedy.
Even, I guess, Bridesmaids is the recent, example of that.
And the big diarrhea scene was added by Apatow.
Really?
Or
was
Apatow
it?
and Feig, they said it needed a big beat in the middle, and that's what they came up with.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Wig wrote it.
Yeah.
And Annie Mumolo.
Yeah.
They did write it, but it was initiated by the guys.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I wonder if it is not like you just said, not wanting to stoop to the level of the boys, or if it's just a fear of, I don't know, not seeming ladylike. Is that what it is? I want to believe that's not what it is. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's just the fear of alienating an audience. Like, people might not be ready for it.
Well, exactly. What did I say? My mom was like, oh my God.
Yeah, and some of your friends, right?
Yeah.
So you can talk yourself out of doing a lot of stuff if you convince yourself that other people aren't ready for it, but what it really means is you're not ready for it. As the artist doing the creative.
But the audiences are ready.
Yeah.
The ladies are ready for fart jokes.
I'm going to put that on a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
So to wrap the show, the final question is always the same thing. Is basically, you know, like, is there something from this that you've stolen, borrowed, copied, or just internalized in your own work? Is there something you'd want to take forward?
Interesting. Well, I certainly have to say that after I saw the movie, I was like, okay, that's exactly the kind of movie that I want to make. Right. So I'm sure when I do, you know, if I do eventually get to make a feature, it will have a heavy influence from this film and this type of film.
So is that the mixture of serious and silly, or is it the
I think
confrontational aspect?
Right around the time that I saw this, I was just starting to work on a feature script with my writing partner, Ben Lewis, and one of the things that we were looking at, and I went back after we wrote it, I went back and looked at Obvious Child as an example. The heroine in our movie, our protagonist in the movie, is literally in every single scene.
Right.
And, you know, I was hard-pressed to think of other movies where that was the case. It's so often broken up by, like, a B plot, especially when it is, like, kind of sort of, you know, a romantic comedy or whatever.
Sure.
And Jenny Slate, man, she's in every frame of this movie, and you don't get tired of her. So I thought that was, like, a really brave, bold choice. So maybe that's something. But yeah, just to be able to write with, you know, half as much confidence as Gillian did with this film. I hope that I can take that into my work, and I hope that, well, what we were just saying about not being afraid to, you know, get a little bit ugly or get a little bit messy or get a little bit gross. I think that's a brave thing for a woman to do, and I hope that I can do that. I hope I can take that into my work. So
how gross is too gross?
I don't know. I'll have to see. I'm trying to think, like, how can I be grosser than this?
Yeah. Oh, there's ways. There's awful ways.
And, you know, like that adorably human moment where they're peeing on the street and he farts on her face. You know, it's so... It is gross, but it's also... It's like an odd bonding moment between them at the same time. It's like she decides in that moment, you know what, I am going to go home with you. I am going to make out with you right now.
Yeah.
I love that.
Vulnerability comes in such strange places.
It really does. It really does.
But that's New York. I want to make, on some level, it's a Brooklyn joke.
Yeah.
I just haven't figured out what it is yet.
Totally.
Brooklyn,
totally.
What? You got a problem with this now? My thanks once again to Lauren Collins, who's the star of the new series My Dead Mom, streaming right now on Crave in Canada. You should also check out the Semcasts from that show's creators, writer-producer Wendy Littner and director Chandler Levac. You can find Lauren on Instagram at Lauren F. Collins, all one word, and you can find Obvious Child on Blu-ray and DVD from Lionsgate and streaming on Prime Video and Canopy in the US. It's also available to rent or buy on various VOD services across North America. You can find me on Blue Sky at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/Semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 43 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps, it truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get the new booster as soon as you can. And if you're in the US, vote. I'll see you next week.